Once upon a time, in a house so large it forgot how to feel small, there lived a man who had everything except the one thing he couldn't buy back. He was the kind of man whose footsteps echoed before he entered the room, the kind of man people looked at with polished respect but never looked into. His name was Adrian Cole Whitaker, and his net worth came second only to his grief. He didn't speak more than he had to. He didn't linger in rooms that weren't made for transactions. And ever since his wife passed away 3 winters ago, Adrian had turned his heart into something cold, mechanical, and efficient, just like the house he built around him. The Whitaker estate sat on a hill outside Belmont Hills, surrounded by trimmed hedges, iron gates, and silence. It had 27 rooms, 4 libraries, a cinema, a smart security system that could read body temperatures. But no warmth. His 2 children, Jude and Clara, hadn't spoken a word since the funeral. They were 6 and 4 when it happened. And now, at 8 and 6, they lived in a mansion where breakfast was served on time but never with a smile. Therapists came and went, specialists left folders and charts, but the house remained a house, not a home, until she came. Her name was Naomi Cheesom, mid-30s, quiet, tired eyes, a cough that lingered. No formal education in child development, no resume impressive enough to warrant a callback, but she was desperate, and desperate people knock gently. She was sent by an agency that only called once, and Adrian, distracted by numbers on a screen, nodded without reading the file. She arrived on a rainy Tuesday, wore a navy blue scarf, carried an old canvas bag, didn't smile too wide, didn't speak unless spoken to. She was shown her quarters at the back of the estate, a small room near the linen storage. The other staff called it the broom closet. She said thank you anyway. That night, the house stayed silent. But the next morning, something changed. Adrian noticed it as he sipped his coffee from behind the glass wall, overlooking the back garden. The twins were sitting near the sliding doors, not moving, but not alone. Naomi was kneeling beside them. Her scarf was wrapped around little Clara's shoulder. She was holding Jude's hand, just holding it, not speaking, not instructing, just being. Adrian's brow creased. He looked at the screen of his tablet again, then back at the window. The image stayed. The children weren't pulling away. He didn't say anything. He just tapped the screen and went back to emails. But the next morning, she did it again. And the next, always gentle, always still. One afternoon, when thunder rolled far in the distance and the air smelled like wet earth, Naomi brought them outside barefoot to the garden, not to play, not to run, just to feel the grass, to feel the rain, to remember something soft. Adrian almost fired her on the spot. He stood behind the curtain, jaw tight. Who brings sick children out into the rain? He stormed to the back door, hand on the knob, ready to yell. But then he paused. The kids were laughing. No sound came out, but their faces laughed. Their chests moved, their eyes closed, their mouths opened in a soundless joy. And Naomi, soaked to the shoulders, was singing something, a lullaby. In Igbo, Adrian stepped back, closed the door, didn't speak of it, didn't fire her, but began to watch, every day, quietly, carefully. He noticed the way she never asked the children to speak. She never begged them to draw. She never tested them with flashcards or toys. She simply watched them breathe. She let them be. And something about that unsettled him. Because grief makes you forget breath is enough, Naomi reminded them. And without permission, without request, the house began to shift. One morning, the children didn't wait to be dressed. Another morning, they sat at the breakfast table before being called. And one evening, as Adrian walked past the hallway near the study, he heard humming. Clara, soft, humming the lullaby. Adrian stopped walking. He didn't enter the room. He didn't ask her to repeat it. He just stood there, frozen. That night, Adrian opened his late wife's journal for the first time in nearly 3 years. He ran his fingers along her handwriting, pages of lullabies, notes on Jude's favorite colors, Clara's fear of thunder. And near the end, under a page folded twice, a sentence that read, "The children don't need fixing. They need someone who doesn't look away." He closed the book. The next morning, Naomi didn't show up for work. Adrian checked the cameras. Her room was empty. Her bag was gone. He called the agency. They had no records of her beyond the one referral. He called the hospital nearby. Nothing. By noon, he was pacing. By evening, he was in his car. At night, he was at the city's general hospital, asking questions no one answered. She came back 2 days later, weaker, palms trembling, shoulders hunched. Adrian was in the kitchen when she walked in. She said nothing. He asked nothing. But he followed her. For the next few nights, he watched more closely. She hid pills in her drawer, coughed into her pillow, winced when lifting trays. She didn't know he saw it. She didn't know the security logs had been updated. She didn't know the cameras followed her. But Adrian was watching. And one Friday evening, when the children had gone to sleep and the rain returned to tap against the windows, Naomi left the house quietly. She didn't carry her bag, just an umbrella and her scarf. Adrian followed. He didn't ask himself why. He didn't bring his driver. He just stepped into his car and drove behind her. 2 turns. 1 alley, a 10-minute walk. She entered an old building tucked behind a row of broken shops. No name on the wall, just peeling paint and flickering light. Adrian parked, waited, watched, then got out. He entered the building, and what he saw made him freeze, not because of what was there, but because of what he felt. Rows of beds, coughing bodies, soft prayers whispered in corners. Naomi was kneeling beside an old woman, the same woman who had once taken care of her when she was young, the woman who gave her shelter when she had none, now dying, now alone. And Naomi, sick herself, was here every night, tending, singing, giving the very breath she barely had. Adrian's throat tightened. He didn't enter. He didn't speak. He just watched. And for the first time in years, the richest man in Belmont Hills felt poor. He went home that night and couldn't sleep. His home was warm, lit, wired, protected, but it had no soul. She had built a soul into a broken corner of the world. The next morning, Naomi returned as if nothing happened. Adrian didn't say a word, but he looked at her differently. And for the first time he asked, "Would you like tea?" She paused, looked at him, and smiled weakly. "No sugar," she whispered. It was the beginning of something neither of them had language for. But the house had already started listening. The next morning, the sun stretches lazily across the Whitaker estate, slipping through the tall windows like a hesitant visitor. Adrian stands in the kitchen again. But this time, he isn't alone. Naomi is seated quietly at the far end of the breakfast table. She holds her cup with 2 hands, as though steadying something inside her. Adrian pretends to look through the pantry, but his eyes drift back to her, watching, not staring, noticing, not questioning. She takes small sips, swallows with effort. Her breathing is shallow. He hears it now. The subtle wheeze tucked inside each inhale, the kind of sound you only notice when you care. The kettle clicks. "Do you?" he begins, then pauses, unsure how to end the question. Naomi looks up, her eyes soft. "I'm all right," she says before he finishes. And he doesn't press, but the kettle keeps whistling, as if it knows the silence between them isn't empty. It's full, with grief, with stories not yet shared, with 2 people carrying too much alone. The children come in, as they do now, without being called. Clara walks in first, bare feet, messy braid, holding a worn stuffed elephant. She walks straight to Naomi, doesn't speak, just climbs onto her lap, careful, gentle. Naomi winces slightly but hides it with a smile. Jude follows, slower, carrying a notebook, not one of the fancy ones the therapists brought, but Naomi's, the one with the fabric cover and the corner tear. He places it on the table beside Adrian. Adrian looks at it, then at Jude, then at Naomi. She doesn't say anything, just gives a quiet nod. Adrian opens the notebook. Inside are drawings, crude, shaky but alive. A tree, a woman, 2 children beneath the tree, and a man, alone, far away. There are no faces, just breath, just presence. Something catches in Adrian's throat. "You've been drawing with them," he says, softer than usual. Naomi nods. "Only when they want to." Clara begins to hum, the same lullaby. Naomi hums along. Adrian listens. His wife used to sing that melody. He remembers the exact moment she wrote it down in the margin of a baby book. He hadn't thought of it in years. Naomi stops humming. "Would you like to sit?" she asks him. nodding toward the chair beside her. Adrian hesitates. Then he does. And in that small act, the floor beneath the house shifts again. The last again. However, and well. And Freud, that afternoon, the house is quieter than usual, but not empty. Naomi moves through the halls slowly. Her steps are careful. She clutches her side occasionally, but she smiles at the children when they peek from corners. She begins to cough deep, hard, painful. Adrian sees her from the upstairs landing. She doesn't know he's watching. He doesn't like the sound. That night, after dinner, Adrian finds an old security log and replays the footage from the night he followed her. He watches it again. Naomi kneeling beside the old woman. Naomi wiping her forehead. Naomi holding her hand long after the woman drifted into sleep. He leans back in his chair, overcome by something unfamiliar. A pull, a weight, a desire to understand. Then a memory of his wife's last night. The way she whispered to the children, "Don't forget to love the quiet." He hadn't known what she meant. Until now. No mine. Tybesound. Doing Romand. Tybesound. The next morning, Naomi doesn't come out of her room. Adrian knocks once. No answer. Twice. Then opens the door slowly. She's curled on the bed, still dressed, breathing heavily. Her scarf is on the floor, her face pale. He steps in. She startles when she sees him. I'm sorry. I overslept, she says, pushing herself up. But she sways. He reaches for her. Her weight is featherlight. "You're not well," he says plainly. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." She lowers her gaze. "I'll be okay." He helps her sit, then sits across from her. "You've been sick since you came here, haven't you?" Naomi doesn't answer. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I wasn't here for me." Silence. Only the sound of her shallow breath between them. Adrian stares at the floor, then back at her. "Do you have anyone? Family?" Naomi shakes her head. "She passed. Last week." Adrian understands. The woman in the clinic. Naomi folds her hands. "I didn't come to stay long," she says quietly. "I just needed to leave something behind. Something good." Adrian feels his chest tighten. "You've done more than that," he says. She looks at him then. Really looks, and for the first time, she sees the man behind the marble. Tired, fractured, human. The crume state, indeparcius, and alive as sabitated. That evening, Adrian calls his private doctor, without Naomi's permission. When the doctor arrives, Naomi tries to resist. But Adrian places a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Let someone care for you," he says. Just once. She doesn't fight him. The doctor runs tests, prescribes medication, schedules imaging. When Naomi's eyes drift shut in exhaustion, Adrian stays by the door until she's fully asleep, then steps out into the hallway and sits. He hasn't sat in a hallway since the hospital where his wife died. But something about this hallway feels different. Softer, alive. He sees Jude peeking from the next room. Adrian pats the space beside him. Jude walks over. No words, just presence. And after a long while, the boy leans gently against his father's side. Adrian lets him. He closes his eyes and breathes. De Brosen Dolore. The first of Osans of Villare. Later that week, Naomi is stronger, still weak, but walking, smiling, moving like someone who knows her time is limited but sacred. The children cling to her more than before. Clara begins to draw faces on her dolls again. Jude writes his first word in her notebook. Listen. Adrian sees it and feels it. The house, once frozen, is thawing. And at the center of it all is a woman who was never trained, never hired properly, never expected to stay, but whose presence has stitched something back together, one breath, one lullaby, one silence at a time. Would be a found, I consest, pomment so. From Ivan Badagrader's often enter video, that night, Adrian finds himself walking into the children's room. They're asleep, but Naomi is seated between their beds, humming, soft, present. Adrian stands in the doorway. Naomi looks up. Would you like to say good night? She asks. He steps forward slowly, places his hand on Clara's head, then Jude's, and just as he turns to leave, he hears it, a whisper, so small, he almost doubts it happened. Papa, from Clara. Adrian turns, stunned. Naomi smiles. She's been trying, she says gently. Tears burn his eyes. He doesn't speak. He just walks out. And for the first time, the house feels smaller, like a home, like a place where healing can happen, quietly, slowly, together. The morning after, Clara whispered, "Papa." The whole house feels different, not louder, not brighter, just warmer, like something invisible has been rewoven. The sun doesn't shine any stronger than before, but it finds the corners now, finds the staircase, finds the kitchen tiles, finds Adrian, standing alone in the dining room, holding a teacup with both hands the way Naomi does. He doesn't drink it, just holds it, like he's learning how to sit with things. Jude enters first that morning, barefoot and quiet as always. But this time, he walks past the table, directly to Adrian, and places the fabric-covered notebook in his hands, then sits beside him. Adrian opens the notebook slowly. Inside is a new page, a sketch, a figure, the same 4 characters as before, but this time the man is closer. Not quite touching the others, but no longer far away. There's something else on the page too, a sun, with a smile. Adrian looks at Jude. The boy says nothing, but he smiles. Was of Everall, Cyan. We like the found eternal to TAFE. Later that afternoon, Naomi returns from her checkup with the private doctor Adrian arranged. She looks a little flushed, but peaceful. She finds Adrian in the library, a room he hadn't entered in months. He stands by the window, a children's book in his hand. She pauses in the doorway. "You found the book," she says softly. Adrian turns. "The one she used to read," he replies. "Yes." He places it on the shelf. She never finished the last chapter. Naomi walks in. Maybe it's not too late. Their eyes meet. There's something new in the silence between them, a tenderness not yet named. But before either can speak again, a scream cuts through the hall. It's Clara. Naomi drops her scarf and runs. Adrian follows. They find Clara crouched in the corner of the bathroom, hands over her ears, trembling. Jude is standing nearby, frozen. A broken glass lies by the sink. Naomi kneels immediately. "No, my darling, it's all right," she whispers, pulling Clara close. Clara's body shakes violently. She doesn't like the sound of glass, Naomi explains, rubbing her back gently. It reminds her of the accident. Adrian feels the air thicken. "The car?" he asks. Naomi nods slowly. The window shattered. Her mother shielded her, but Clara still remembers the sound. Adrian's jaw clenches. He hadn't known this. He always thought it was the silence after the funeral that made them mute. He didn't realize it was the sound before. Jude kneels beside them and gently takes Clara's hand. Naomi hums the lullaby. Soft, barely there. Clara breathes. Slowly, then speaks. Just one word. "Mama." Adrian's heart stops. Naomi freezes. Clara looks up at her. "Mama," she repeats, placing her small palm on Naomi's cheek. Naomi's eyes fill. Adrian's throat closes. Jude wraps his arms around both of them, and in that small bathroom with a broken glass on the floor, the word hangs in the air like a miracle. Mama, not biology, not force, just truth, chosen. He'd come 170 have rolled of Aquales and 70 have Taines. Later that night, Adrian steps outside for air. The rain has returned, soft and rhythmic. He stands beneath the overhang near the garden where Naomi first brought the children barefoot. He remembers being angry, offended, and now he understands. Healing never comes with instructions. It comes with presence. He hears the door open behind him. Naomi joins him, wrapped in a blanket. She stands beside him, looking at the same night. "They called you Mama today," Adrian says, his voice barely louder than the rain. "I know," Naomi whispers. "They've never called anyone that since." He doesn't finish. She doesn't ask him to. "They chose it," he says after a while. "I didn't earn it," Naomi replies. "Maybe that's what makes it real." They stand in silence, a silence that doesn't hurt. After a moment, Adrian speaks again. "You could leave, you know. You don't owe this house anything. You're sick. You have your own life." Naomi's gaze remains steady. "This house gave me something too," she says softly. "What?" She turns to him. "Belonging." Adrian swallows hard. And then, in the rain, he tells her something he hasn't told anyone. "I used to blame them." Naomi blinks. "The children?" she asks gently. He nods. I never said it out loud, but after she died, I stopped looking at them, stopped listening. I saw her face in theirs, and it hurt, so I stepped back, into numbers, systems, anything cold. Naomi doesn't respond. She simply reaches for his hand. He lets her, and for the first time, the man who once built walls taller than his house lets someone touch the center of his grief. Delacia sating to war. Zenpovgan, to end forgetting to war. Inside the house, Jude opens the notebook again. He draws a new picture. Naomi, in the middle, arms around Clara and Jude. And the man? This time, he's holding a flower, a small one, facing the others. The sun is still smiling, but now there are clouds, and rain, and under the rain, the flower grows, have a tense of a brime, with betia for months. The next day, Adrian cancels all his business meetings. He stays home, eats with the children, listens to Naomi. He begins to speak less and feel more. He doesn't force the children to speak. He lets the quiet teach him. He watches Clara hum while brushing her doll's hair. He watches Jude trace the lines of Naomi's notebook as if learning how to write again. And he watches Naomi, moving slower now, weaker, her body thinner, but her soul strong, holding the whole house together with nothing but her breath, her faith, and her stillness. And Adrian begins to fear something he hasn't feared in years. Loss, but not of money, or assets, or deals. Something much deeper. The kind of loss that cracks you open after you just began to heal. The kind that would silence the house again. And so that night, while Naomi is asleep, Adrian stands outside her room. He watches her breathe and whispers to the hallway, "Please, don't take her yet." His voice trembles, then steadies. I never thanked her. The light under her door flickers. A lullaby plays faintly from the monitor near the children's room, and somewhere in the house, rain begins to fall again. Soft, healing, unstoppable. The next morning, Naomi is standing by the window of the east corridor. The children are asleep. Adrian hasn't come downstairs yet. Outside, the rain has slowed to a mist, floating in the golden air like breath. Naomi's hand rests gently on the glass. Her reflection stares back at her tired eyes, pale cheeks, and a softness that no sickness can steal. Behind her, footsteps echo down the hall, slow, uncertain. It's Adrian. He doesn't speak. He just stands beside her, mimicking her stance. She turns slightly, enough to meet his gaze, but not enough to disturb the moment. "I used to come here every morning," she says quietly, "before the children woke up, before anyone noticed I was limping." Adrian watches the rain. "I never noticed," he says. "I know." Silence. Then, "Why did you stay?" She inhales. "Because no one ever asked that before." "I stayed," she says slowly, "because this house felt like a prayer waiting to be answered." Adrian turns to her. "And you thought you were the answer?" "No," Naomi replies, a faint smile. "I thought maybe I could kneel beside it long enough that someone else would hear it too." Adrian swallows hard. There's something unraveling inside him, something deep, rooted in shame, in regret, in love. But he doesn't name it. Instead he says, "The children, they love you." Naomi nods. "They chose me." A beat. "And I choose them too. We have to backslide to the tenses. We have to sign." Later that day, Naomi is folding laundry when she suddenly stumbles. A wave of dizziness hits her. She grips the shelf, closes her eyes. The world tilts. Adrian is walking past the corridor at that moment. He catches her before she falls. "No more pretending," he says firmly. She's too weak to argue. He carries her to the couch, gently, like glass. She trembles. "I'm okay," she murmurs. "No," he says softly. "You're not." The doctor arrives within the hour. He runs tests again. Naomi protests, but her voice is thin, her resistance almost gone. The results are worse than expected. Adrian stands outside the room, fists clenched. "Tell me the truth," he demands. The doctor looks down at the tablet, then up. She needs rest, serious treatment, time. Does she have it? A pause. Maybe weeks, maybe less. Adrian closes his eyes. When he returns to her room, Naomi is awake, watching the ceiling. "I'm sorry," he says. "For what?" for letting you carry so much. Naomi smiles weakly. I didn't carry it alone. To mine sandins ferneth the manor, but I was doon of the one. But I have to doing it of the dogs. That night, Naomi asks Adrian for a favor. Can you take them to her garden? Adrian nods. He knows what she means. The small space out back where she always sat with the children, the one they started calling Mama's garden. The next morning, he leads the children there. Jude holds Clara's hand. Both of them look around, searching for her. She's resting, Adrian says gently. They sit together on the stone bench. Clara pulls out a notebook from under her sweater. Jude opens it, and they begin to draw. No words, just colors, lines, shapes. Adrian watches. After a while, he kneels beside them and picks up a pencil. His hand hesitates, then begins to move. He draws a house, and inside that house, 4 people, no longer separated, no longer faceless. He draws Naomi too, underneath a tree, and the children's hands are in hers. The next to Palasi de Bon of the Gold, who had differently start of a process Ivadanta. Naomi sleeps through most of that day, but in the evening she wakes to find something unexpected. A meal tray, not from the staff, but from Adrian. The portions are small, balanced, herbal tea on the side. There's a napkin tucked beneath the plate, folded. Inside is a note. The children smile today. I wanted you to see it. Naomi presses the napkin to her chest, and for the first time since she fell ill, she cries. Not from pain, but from presence, from thousand for life of tea. Phrasen times, where the rided 20 tea. Adrian starts spending more time in the children's room. He reads aloud now, not just business emails or text messages, but stories, old books from when his wife was alive. He finds her annotations in the margins. Clara likes this part. Jude always closes his eyes here. The ink is faded, but the memory is not. And one evening, Clara does something she hasn't done in years. She climbs into his lap, just sits there, no words. Adrian doesn't move, doesn't speak, just holds her, and when Jude curls up beside them on the couch, Adrian wraps his arms around them both, tighter than ever, because the silence doesn't scare him anymore. It feels like music now, like a lullaby without sound. We have doings of the pod. In Wyver doings the ford. Naomi's condition worsens. She starts coughing blood. The doctor suggests hospitalization. Naomi refuses. I want to stay, she says. Why? Because this house is my last gift. Adrian doesn't argue. But that night, he sits beside her bed, the children asleep, the rain steady. And he asks the question he's been holding for days. What do I do if you don't wake up? Naomi opens her eyes, weak but clear. You love them. I do. Then stay soft, she whispers. It's not easy. It's not meant to be. Tears roll down Adrian's cheeks. Naomi touches his hand. And when you miss me, she adds, voice faint, go sit in the garden, close your eyes, let them tell you stories. Because you now, these last pans of the Backer. In the process of the pans of the Panna, and a thouning noted breezes of the pans of the Panna, 2 days later, Naomi collapses while reaching for her scarf. The house goes silent. Adrian calls the ambulance. The children cry for the first time, real, loud, aching sobs. At the hospital, Naomi slips in and out of consciousness. Adrian never leaves her side. He holds her hand. He reads to her. He plays the lullaby from his phone. When she opens her eyes, she whispers, "Are they okay?" He nods. "They miss you." She smiles, then closes her eyes again. Bye. That night, Adrian returns home. Alone, he walks into the garden. It's raining again. He doesn't use an umbrella. He sits on the bench, opens Naomi's notebook. Inside is a single new page, a drawing of him, smiling, holding the children, and at the bottom, written in her delicate, fading script, "You don't have to be perfect, just present." He presses the page to his chest and weeps. Not the restrained tears of a businessman, but the kind of crying that empties years. When he looks up, Jude and Clara are standing in the rain, watching him. He opens his arms. They run to him. And for the first time in forever, all 3 are soaked, shaking, and held together in one quiet embrace. No words, just breath and healing. We have rebland paces. in the stiffid. From the seized called my fan. Back at the hospital, Naomi lies still, but a faint smile rests on her lips, as if somewhere, in the garden of her soul, a new flower has begun to bloom. The next morning is quiet, too quiet, the kind that sinks deep into the skin before you even open your eyes. Adrian sits at the edge of the children's bed, watching them sleep. Clara curls beneath a thick blanket, her small hand resting over Jude's. They've barely spoken since Naomi was rushed to the hospital, not with words, but with their eyes, their drawings, their clinging. Adrian hasn't left the house since that night, not even to check on his business, not even to return calls. The estate no longer runs on systems, it runs on rhythm, on presence. He keeps the notebook with him now, Naomi's notebook. He reads through it again, her thoughts scribbled in the corners, simple notes that feel like scripture now. Let the house breathe. If the child doesn't speak, listen with your heart. Healing happens in silence. Adrian closes the notebook and exhales, then stands. He walks to the garden. It rained again last night. The soil is soft beneath his shoes. He bends down and places a single white flower in the center of Naomi's garden. The children planted it last summer, but it hadn't bloomed until this week. He touches the petals, then looks up at the sky. No words come, but somehow he feels she's listening. By T. Brie. Please to Vigersons, af dein makes, as a 90. Sodali anasis one wa. At the hospital, Naomi is breathing slower. The machines do most of the work now. The doctor says she may not make it through the weekend. Adrian sits beside her every evening, reads aloud. He brings the children once. Clara hums the lullaby softly in the hospital chair. Jude draws on her palm with his finger. Naomi doesn't open her eyes, but the heart monitor shifts, as if her soul heard them. With the law to divide of Beda, but was to be Elise of the Paracessa. At home, Adrian begins changing things, small at first. The long dining table is replaced with a small circular one. He moves the children's beds into the same room, takes down the portraits of stern ancestors and replaces them with sketches the children made. And late one evening, he climbs up to the attic, finds boxes of his late wife's things, and unpacks them, not to mourn her, but to let her memory back into the light. He finds a recording, her voice, singing the same lullaby Naomi sings. He plays it again and again. The children fall asleep to it that night. So does Adrian. These aren't panede ben babelieve than here, that is vista das cord. We have no time town of the send. 2 days later, the hospital calls. Her condition has stabilized. No promises, no miracles, but she's breathing on her own again. Adrian doesn't wait. He takes the children. They bring her scarf, her notebook, a drawing, one they made together. It shows the 4 of them in the garden. Adrian, Clara, Jude, and Naomi, not lying down, not sick, but standing, strong, smiling. Naomi opens her eyes when they enter. Slow, heavy, her hand trembles as it rises from the bed. Clara runs to her. So does Jude. Adrian holds back. He just watches. Naomi's voice is paper-thin, but she says it. Home. Adrian steps closer. You scared us, he says, kneeling beside her. She smiles. Still here. Clara places the drawing in her lap. Naomi studies it. Her fingers brush the page. Then Adrian does something unexpected. He takes her hand, not gently, but with purpose, like someone who has come home. Come back, he whispers. If you can, come back. Naomi's eyes glisten. She blinks slowly, and nods. To my dated. But a 5 conforming to a vom, and a brobly. The next 2 weeks are slow, but healing. Naomi moves from the hospital to the estate, back to her small room near the linen storage. But it's no longer called the broom closet. Adrian renovates it, adds windows, warm light, a small reading nook. Jude places her notebook on the table. Clara arranges flowers in a mason jar by the bed. They take turns watching over her now. And Adrian, he cooks, badly, but sincerely. The first meal he brings her is overcooked rice and lukewarm broth. She eats it anyway, grinning the entire time. Not bad, she lies. You're a terrible liar, he replies. But he smiles too. Prestine de P say, of the broad. And I have a 37 num, The staff notice it first. The house hums now, like something new has begun to grow. Like the silence that once ruled the halls has been replaced with softness, laughter, sometimes tears, but never alone. Naomi begins walking again. Her cough lessens, her cheeks return to color, and on one morning, while Adrian is trimming a bush in the garden with the children, Naomi opens the door and walks out unassisted. They stop, stare, then clap, and she laughs. Not the gentle kind, but full-bodied, alive. Adrian laughs too. "Thought you'd never walk again," he says, wiping sweat from his brow. Naomi shrugs. "You gave me a reason to. By Ty's wand, and a Bly's wise wand, and a Bly's wand." That evening, Naomi sits with the children in the living room. They're watching old home videos Adrian found. On the screen, his wife dances with Clara as a toddler. Jude, barely walking, chases Bubbles. Adrian walks in and freezes. Naomi watches him. He doesn't turn off the video. He walks over, sits beside them, and when the music plays again, the lullaby humming through the speakers, Clara sings along. So does Naomi. Jude mouths the words. And Adrian? He doesn't sing, but he closes his eyes and listens. "Du bist life, and mine are regret." Later, after the children are asleep, Adrian and Naomi sit in the garden. It's not raining, but the ground is still wet with memory. He hands her a letter. She opens it. It's an official contract. Employment, permanent, with benefits, medical care, everything. Naomi looks up. "Is this necessary?" "No," Adrian says. "But you are." Naomi doesn't sign it. Not yet. Instead, she folds it gently, places it back in the envelope, then says something he'll never forget. "I didn't come here for a job, Adrian." "Then why?" "To remind someone how to love again." Adrian swallows hard. "And now?" Naomi smiles. "Now I stay, because I'm loved too." He doesn't respond, just reaches for her hand, and in the middle of a garden that once held only silence, two hands rest together, weathered, wounded, and warm, with Kalajai Stintelges ordered. T97 of that passe. The next morning, Clara and Jude run into the kitchen. They're laughing. Adrian looks up from the stove. "What is it?" he asks. Jude holds up Naomi's notebook. Clara points to a new drawing. All 5 of them now, including someone new, a baby. Adrian raises an eyebrow. Clara shrugs. "Mama says love grows," she says. Naomi walks in behind them. "Did she now?" Adrian asks. Smirking, Naomi chuckles. "Children dream big." Adrian looks around at the kitchen, the children, the light, then at her, and nods. "Maybe we should too, with make a dinnervins." But they way like, becomes and feast, to do a lady. The house is no longer just a house. It's not perfect, but it breathes. And in the quiet moments, when rain hits the windows or a child hums in the hallway, Adrian closes his eyes and smiles. Because what began with silence has become a lullaby, a living one, written by pain, sung by grace, and held together by the steady, unshakable love of a woman who never forced change. She invited it, and in doing so, made a house into a home. The sound of rain returns, but this time, it doesn't fall like grief. It falls like memory, soft, steady, familiar. Naomi stands at the window, a warm shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her body still thin but stronger. She hums quietly, the lullaby floating on her breath like it's always belonged to the house. Behind her, Clara is braiding Jude's hair. He sits patiently, holding the mirror she gave him last week, the one with the small red heart etched on the corner. They don't speak, but their silence is no longer hollow. It's sacred. Naomi turns from the window and watches them. Her smile is tired but full, a kind of fullness that only comes from being seen, truly seen, and still chosen. Faxo, it's take the twoing, and Faxo, the Byzantigians. Downstairs, Adrian is on the phone, but it's not about business. He's calling the hospital, the same one Naomi stayed in. He's asking questions about a donation, anonymously. He ends the call, closes the ledger, and takes a breath. The house is changing him, not all at once, but like a tide, quiet, relentless, gentle. And 45 lines to do. 45 lines, Later that morning, Clara comes down holding a box, Naomi's box, the one she used to keep under her bed. She places it on the table and looks up at Adrian. "She said you can open it," Clara whispers. Adrian hesitates, then slowly lifts the lid. Inside are little pieces of Naomi's life, a ribbon from her childhood, a faded photograph of a church choir, a drawing of her mother, letters, some unopened, and a notebook, different from the one the children use. This one is filled with her handwriting, journals, prayers, hopes she never said out loud. Adrian flips to the middle. Day 41. He doesn't smile, but he watches. "I think he's listening now, that's all I ask, that he listens. If not to me, then to them." He closes the notebook and holds it in his lap. He looks at Clara, then Jude, then up the stairs where Naomi has returned to lie down. He makes a quiet decision. And de grenst driver. Des constraints of the abilities and wild of alive. That afternoon, Adrian calls the staff together. For the first time in years, the entire team gathers in the parlor. He stands in front of them not as their boss, but as a man learning how to show up. "I know this house hasn't always felt alive," he says carefully. "And that's on me." No one moves, but no one leaves. "I let silence rule here. I let grief decide how much light was allowed in. But someone came along and reminded us that healing isn't noise, it's presence. A beat. She came here to help the children, but she healed all of us." The staff exchange looks. He continues, "I'm remodeling the quarters. All of them. Everyone deserves light. And we're reinstating team meals, weekly. You'll be paid for your time, and you'll be seen." He pauses, then adds, "Because I wasn't. And I won't let that happen again." As a pound, 2317 Storm, incrided. That night, Naomi wakes up to find her room lit by candlelight. There's a small dinner tray beside her bed, and next to it, a folded paper. She opens it. "They call you Mama. But I hope you know, you're also the heart of this house, eh?" She presses the note to her chest, closes her eyes, and smiles. "With that 5 Elise," and down, "with the news Elise, from Civity Frey." The next morning, Jude does something unexpected. He speaks, just one word, "Morning," to Adrian. The sound is so soft it almost disappears in the air. But Adrian hears it. He turns slowly. Jude looks unsure, scared even. Adrian walks over, kneels, and places both hands on Jude's shoulders. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting to hear that," he says. Jude nods, then hugs him. And Adrian cries. Imported. Intubub, or Vise, and Davli Fordy at Buys. Naomi watches from the stairway, Clara beside her. Naomi whispers, "See?" Clara looks up. "See what?" Naomi places a hand over Clara's chest. "Your heart's working." Clara presses her palm over Naomi's and breathes. Minister Valley, tens deturned, and Daisy, and 9 to Devalia. Later that week, Adrian takes the children to Naomi's garden again. But this time, he brings a surprise. 2 baby goats. Jude shrieks in delight. Clara covers her mouth in wonder. Naomi, from the window, laughs so loud the birds fly off the hedges. "They need names," Adrian says. Jude points. "That one is Sunday," Clara points. "And that one is Rain." Adrian nods. "Perfect. From Artie free is racing to a bada back. From Artie free of the flayed." That evening, Naomi joins them outside. She walks slowly but without help. She sits on the bench where Adrian first watched her with suspicion. Now, he sits beside her. "You did all this," he says. "No," she replies. "We did." The children run circles around the goats. The goats run circles around Adrian. Naomi laughs again. And Adrian watches her like someone watching the moon after years of darkness. He reaches into his pocket, pulls out a tiny velvet box. Naomi freezes. "Adrian, it's not what you think," he says quickly. He opens it. Inside is a ring, but not a diamond, a simple gold band, and inside the band, engraved, "Not perfect, just present." Naomi tears up. "It's for you," he says, voice quiet. "No promises, no pressure, just my way of saying you don't have to go." She takes the ring, holds it in her palm, then puts it on, not as a bride, but as someone who belongs. Time's time, and Thou knows. And that night, the house is silent again, but it's the silence of peace, not absence. The children sleep side by side, arms tangled in a dream. Naomi sleeps in her new room, no longer tucked away but beside the garden. Adrian walks through the house, barefoot. He lights a candle in each hallway, not out of superstition, but gratitude, each flame a whisper. Thank you, thank you, thank you. He stops by the mirror in the main hallway, looks at himself, and smiles. Then he places his hand over his chest, feels his heart beat. Alive, present, enough. The mornings now begin with music, not from speakers, but from life. Clara sings softly to her doll. Jude hums along while brushing the baby goats. Naomi sits in the sun near the garden, wrapped in a shawl, hands folded over her notebook. And Adrian, once a man of rigid silence, now hums under his breath as he slices apples in the kitchen. The house is still quiet, but it's no longer hollow. It listens. It echoes warmth. It breathes. Adrian places the apple slices into small bowls and sets them on a tray. He adds a cup of warm honey tea, just how Naomi likes it. As he walks through the hall, he catches his reflection again. He doesn't stop this time. He doesn't fix his collar or adjust his face. He just walks, alive in his skin, by Haftement, Superiority, your God and tell. 17 passions. Outside, Naomi is writing. The pages of her notebook are nearly full now. She writes slower than before, pausing between thoughts, as though savoring the silence between words. Adrian approaches and places the tray beside her. You remembered the honey, she says, smiling. You remembered everything else, he replies. She takes the cup, her fingers brushing his. There's no awkwardness, no rush, just a rhythm. A breath between two people who've come through the storm and found each other on the other side. Naomi opens the notebook and slides it toward him. Want to read the last entry? She asks. He hesitates, then nods. He reads silently. Today, Jude said Mama, while hugging Clara. Not out of habit, but out of joy. I think joy speaks first in a child. And Adrian, he laughed today. Not a polite one, a real one. It startled even him. I don't think I'm dying anymore. Adrian looks up, startled. Naomi meets his eyes. I mean it, she says. My body is weak, but something in me. It came back. He reaches for her hand. Because you stopped walking alone, she finishes. B7, 5 to B. And by the later do with the servants' lines, that evening, the children prepare a surprise. They gather every piece of Naomi's old notebook and create a book. Clara binds it with a ribbon. Jude adds a cover with flowers drawn in bright yellow pencil. They call it the Mama Book. Adrian helps them set up the garden with lanterns and soft cushions. They invite the staff. No one wears uniforms. Everyone brings something: bread, fruit, songs. When Naomi steps outside, she gasps. The entire garden is glowing, and her children stand holding the book. Clara steps forward first. We made this, she says, so your heart never forgets our house. Jude adds, and our hearts. Naomi kneels, tears already streaming. They hand her the book. She opens it. Every page is filled. Drawings, words, stories. Even a page from Adrian. I didn't know how to love, but I watched you do it, and I remembered. Naomi presses the book to her chest, then opens her arms. They rush into them, Jude on one side, Clara on the other. And Adrian? He watches, and his heart swells in a way he can no longer contain. He steps forward, wraps all three of them in his arms. Naomi's eyes close, and for a long, long time, they just breathe together. Constanzo in dollar sad of the port. Constanzo to a dollar sad of the port. Later, after the children are asleep, Adrian and Naomi remain in the garden. She rests her head on his shoulder. I think this is my favorite place in the world, she says. The garden? No, she replies. Here, right here, with you. Adrian turns his head slightly. I still worry, he admits, that I'll wake up one day and all of this will vanish. Naomi smiles. If it does, it means we loved well enough to miss it. He nods slowly. The lanterns flicker. A breeze moves through the leaves. And somewhere in the house, the lullaby plays again. Only this time, it's not Naomi singing. It's Clara. singing to her doll. Baxi. Fantasize. Baxi intentionation. Fantasize. The next morning, Naomi is weak again. Her hands shake as she dresses. She sits longer between steps, breathes deeper after small tasks. Adrian watches her from the kitchen. He doesn't hover, but he doesn't look away either. He brings her breakfast, then sits across from her. She eats slowly. "I'm tired again," she admits. "I know," he says, "but I'm not afraid anymore." Adrian leans forward. "Why?" Naomi places her hand on his. "Because I've already lived the part that matters." He blinks back, tears. "Don't say goodbye." She squeezes his hand. "I'm not." A pause. "I'm saying thank you. To these rent. To these recendories. 5R. To these recendories. That night, the children ask to sleep in Naomi's room. Adrian sets up sleeping mats on the floor. Jude refuses the mat and climbs into Naomi's bed instead. Clara follows. Naomi says nothing, just pulls them close. Adrian lingers at the door. He watches as the three of them fall asleep. Their breathing soft. Their bodies tangled in something deeper than words. Family, chosen, formed in the silence of grief and the warmth of grace. To Levanzi. In the early hours, Adrian dreams of his wife. She's standing in the garden, under the same tree where Naomi once sat humming. She doesn't speak, but her smile says everything. She points toward the house, then fades with the morning mist. Adrian wakes before dawn. He walks into Naomi's room. She's still asleep. Clara and Jude are curled into her sides. Adrian stands there a long time, then whispers, "Thank you," to his wife, to Naomi, to whoever wrote this miracle into their lives. He doesn't need the answer. The presence is enough. The Semkandrin the Nord, because Vavri, with mortated Contrasa. As light fills the room, Naomi stirs. Her eyes flutter open, and when she sees him standing there, she smiles, weakly, but fully. "Morning," she whispers. Adrian kneels beside the bed. Morning, and in that moment, nothing else matters. Not money, not time, not sickness, only presence, only breath, only love. The sun rises slowly over the Whitaker estate, not in a rush, not blinding, just warm, like a hand resting gently on your shoulder. Inside, the house is still, but not silent. A kettle sings quietly in the kitchen. Jude is drawing on the floor near the window. Clara is braiding Naomi's hair, one small loop at a time. Adrian stands nearby, holding a cup of tea he made with honey, ginger, and the tiniest pinch of clove, just how Naomi taught him. She sits in a chair by the garden doors, legs wrapped in a blanket, face turned toward the light. She doesn't speak much anymore, but she smiles. All the time. Adrian kneels beside her and places the cup in her hands. She looks at him, steady. "Still here," she whispers. He nods. "And always." 2500. Later that morning, the children invite Naomi outside. They've prepared something. Jude leads her carefully, holding one hand. Clara holds the other. Adrian follows with a bench cushion under one arm and Naomi's notebook in the other. They bring her to her garden, and beneath the largest tree, a new stone now rests in the soil. Not a grave, a marker, softly engraved, Mama Naomi's garden, where silence turned into song. Naomi stares at it. For a moment, she says nothing. Then quietly, with trembling lips, "You made me real." Adrian replies, "You made us whole." She sits on the bench, the children climbing up beside her, one on each side. They open the final pages of the notebook, drawings of her, in different forms. Naomi holding a baby goat. Naomi reading by candlelight. Naomi asleep with Clara on her chest. Naomi laughing. Naomi being. Each image drawn by the children's hands. Each one full of love. Jude takes her hand and places it over the last drawing. It's of all five of them, standing together, and behind them a large tree with its roots showing beneath the ground, reaching, holding. In fact, it mestron to 5 UYs. Why wise, in a stays in Delinborough must've. That night, the house hosts its first dinner under the stars. Lanterns sway in the breeze. The staff laugh and eat at the same table as the family. Adrian stands at the center. He raises a glass. "I used to live in a house with walls thicker than my heart. I lost my wife. I lost my children's voices. I lost myself. He looks at Naomi. And then someone walked in carrying nothing but a scarf, a notebook, and a quiet spirit, and she gave us back everything. He turns to Clara and Jude. To my children who taught me that silence isn't emptiness, it's sacred. He turns to the staff, to the people who kept showing up, even when I wasn't worth showing up for. And finally, he turns to Naomi, to the woman who became our heartbeat. Everyone raises a glass, even Naomi. The tens of the past life, of resilient, caustic, Azara of the signed by. As the evening fades, Adrian and Naomi sit beneath the tree. The children are asleep in their arms. Naomi leans against him, fragile but calm. Will you be all right? She asks softly. No, he says. Not without you. She looks up, but before she can respond he adds, but I'll still show up. Every day. I'll love them the way you taught me to. Naomi nods. And the garden? I'll take care of it. And the notebook? I'll fill it. She smiles. You already have. We've come side of the divo pieces of the dimes, and I think of the dimes. In the weeks that follow, Naomi grows weaker. She no longer walks alone. But she's never truly alone. Every morning, the children climb into her bed. Every afternoon, Adrian reads her a passage from the notebook, her own words, returned like a prayer. Every night, she sleeps with her window open, so the garden's scent can find her. And one morning, quietly, with the sunlight resting on her face and a smile still curled on her lips, she does not wake up. Descalatate gan, with those the timon and teat. Descalatate teat. There is no dramatic scream, no flurry, no ambulance, just stillness. Adrian is the first to notice. He kneels by her side, takes her hand, and whispers, "Thank you." The children come in later. They don't cry right away. They just curl into the blanket around her. Clara places her doll beside Naomi's hand. Jude places the notebook at her feet. Adrian lights a candle, and the house stays quiet, soft, sacred. Today sense of Parley and Desay, today sense of Asidas and Desays. 1 week later, the garden blooms brighter than ever. The goats circle the tree. The staff bring fresh flowers every morning. And on the wooden bench, a plaque now rests. She didn't raise us. She lifted us, and we rose. Adrian sits there often, not to grieve, but to remember, to feel, to keep showing up. Because Rishastaf, in a mest of ID. But Bryza now for, with the descent of God, every night, Clara sings the lullaby, not just for her doll now, but for herself, for Jude, for her father, and for the woman who taught them all how to be present, even in goodbye. Jude keeps drawing. He fills notebooks with their days, their laughter, their rain, and one evening, when Adrian finds him sketching Naomi's scarf, he kneels beside him and says, "Teach me," and Jude does. From the ever resented, I was Ifra, 2000 and founds. Years pass, but the house stays full, not with noise, but with breath, memory, faith, and presence. Because Naomi was never just the maid. She was the miracle they didn't know how to pray for. And even in her absence, she stays. In every lullaby, every bowl of warm apple slices, every sun-drenched window, and every page of a notebook that now lives on the shelf titled, "The House That Learned to Listen."